Hello, my name is Fatima Ismail, and I was on the Young People's Committee from 2022 to 2023. On behalf of all our committee, I would like to thank everyone for their time today, for being here with us on this launch. To proceed with this Zoom meeting, I would like to take a moment to recognize the events that happened last night in Dublin. We want everyone here to know that we acknowledge all the feelings and emotions that are generated by what happened. So with that in mind, I would just like everyone to take a moment and read the poem that is here on the screen. And this poem is an invitation to a brave space. So once you read it, I would like everyone to pick a line that resonates with them about everything that has been happening over the last few days. And if you would like to share in the chat, or if it's okay with you to say it out loud, and unmute your mic. Thank you. We can already see like a few people have entered into chat. Neve has said we will work on it side by side. Erin, we amplify the voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. And then Emer shared that we have the responsibility to examine what we think and what we know. Aiden, we will not be perfect. Katie said the same one as Emer, and we have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We have the right to start somewhere. Aaron, we call for each other to more truth and love. Nandana, we amplify the voices that fight to be heard otherwise. Simon, together we will create a brave space.
Fatima, I would like to say my line. I think we will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. But sometimes it's doing the work, things happen and we need to show up for each other. And so this is based on solidarity and connection. So our intention is that it's solidarity and connection. And we have to sometimes step into space and just hold space for each other. So thanks, Fatima.
No problem. I see there's already a few more responses coming in. We exist in the real world. We call each other to more truth. And love. Okay, I think that's it.
What I wanted to say really was that we welcome any voices on the Brave Space poem, because it's really important that we get to hear each other's voices as well in a space like this. So if anybody had a line from the poem that they would be willing to share actually and put their voice into the space.
I will.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit sick, so I'm a bit snooty. Hello. My line was, we call each other to more truth and love. And I think that's important because sometimes we're scared to feel those emotions and we're scared to, feel the truth of whatever happening, of whatever we feeling, and you try to like bury stuff. So I think that was that thing that, hit home.
Right, Jacob. Kelvin, I know you were involved in workshopping the poem.
The line that I chose is that we're in the real world because sometimes we need to really recognize that we actually are in that kind of like space. And for me, the action that happened yesterday really made me feel like in two ways. One, as a youth worker, I felt that in some ways our work that we've been like raising awareness about this action and these issues for a very long time. And then sometimes people might think that it's not actually existing in the country, and it's this action really highlighted the work that we have been trying to say as youth workers, that it is there. So people now can actually see that is actually happening. So it makes me feel like we sometimes, this action is a negative action that happened in a country that we all call home. But at the same time, what I take from this is that it also amplified our voices as youth workers. There's something I've been trying to say and really made it real for people that we are actually living in a real world where people actually think completely different from what we are working against. So this is what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay. From an NYCI perspective, we want to offer a message of solidarity and concern for the communities affected by this action and for the communities that we work with and their families and friends. And that's a really important message from NYCI this morning. And we really appreciate who's in the space this morning. And we think it's a very timely event. And so, and we're very very thankful that the Young People's Committee actually decided to focus on poverty as an area, as a critical area for youth work in 2023. So with that, Fatima, I'm going to invite you to take back the hosting.
Thanks for that, Sally. So I'm just going to introduce our panel speakers here. So today we have Simon Murtagh with us, Sarah Kelleher, Shauna from the Young People's Committee, and Sibyl from the Young People's Committee. So when we were creating our resource, our main question was, how do we create a space to talk about poverty and systemic inequality in a way that people can connect and feel comfortable in that space? So now I'm just going to share the stage to Sibyl from the Young People's Committee to talk about that with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fatima. So I suppose, would you like me to introduce the resources this is?
Oh, maybe, Sibyl, before we go into that, we might pass to Sarah, then to Simon, and then go back to you. So, I'll via Fatima invite Sarah to go first, if that's okay.
Perfect, yeah. So we have Sarah Kelleher, if you would like to unmute your mic.
Hi, hello everyone. I've got a cold, I'm afraid, so my voice isn't great today, but I'm delighted to be here, particularly after the events of last night. I think it's very timely to have this discussion today, because we have to think of a way forward that's better than what happened last night. And I think it is using a resource like the one you've produced is one of the ways forward. We need to be working more and more with young people who feel very disaffected. Certainly the ones on the streets last night, I can say, are probably most likely there because they themselves feel very disaffected or don't feel their voice has been heard. So we have to, in some ways, in a positive way, I could say, help the government to find a way forward rather than just using the methodologies that they've been. The only dialogue I've heard since yesterday is ones like are used in court system, use a judiciary system to penalise young people for what happened last night. I'm not in favour of vandalism, obviously, but I think this resource is a great way forward to work with young people. What we need, of course, is more youth work, more engagement with more young people, particularly young people who are currently not attending anything like this today or any youth service, of which there are huge numbers. And I can talk about that later. But we definitely need more resources in the youth workspace, because these young people will grow up to be the adults of tomorrow. And, if last night is anything to go by, we certainly need them to be using their voice, their energy in a different way. So I'll just say that for now. I work with LYCS. We're based off Sean McDermott Street in the North Inner City. I have no doubt that a lot of the young people last night came from the North Inner City, so it's a very scary place for us today. Our own creche, it was about 2 minutes walk from where that child was attacked yesterday. It was horrific, really, for us. We had parents in our creche picking up their own child when they heard about the accident, and they had older children in that school. Same with staff, so there was a hysterical exodus to Parnell Square to see were their children okay. And that child actually was being picked up by a creche worker to be brought from the school to an after-school service. So it related hugely to our own creche staff. And we also have, large numbers of our children who have left our creche would be in junior or senior infants in Closh de Vera. So the scare yesterday was enormous, just enormous. And luckily in the North Inner City, we have a critical incident group who meet. They're meeting now as I'm here, and who will put together a plan of action for everybody. But I think today is timely, and I wanted to come here today just so that we can progress this kind of work, because to me, LYCS has been providing what was called development education, global citizenship education for about 30 years now. And I've always said it is the most useful educational tool that we use. We're a community centre focusing on education training primarily. We have a creche, a youth club, special school for early school leavers, an adult education centre. So we work with about 250 people a week. And of all the things we do, this kind of work, I would say, is the most valuable. It can affect most change in people's thinking. It can give them agency and get them to feel that they can become, their voice can be heard. So enough of me for now, and I'll try and talk again later. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I do agree, like, taking preventative measures is a part of the solution to prevent these events that are happening right now around Ireland. So now, if it's okay with you, Simon from Oxfam is here with us. If you could unmute your mic and share some of your thoughts on the work you do.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted there. Yeah, the first thing I want to say is that I think it's great that we're having this event today. You know, I think this is the right thing to do today. It's standing together. It's a great report which has been produced by young people from all different identities and backgrounds, as the report shows. And as much as a lot of us are scared today and upset, this is the right thing to do, to launch this, to have this conversation, to push forward with this campaign. So just to say well done on the report and having this event today. You know, I read the report, I learned a lot from the report. I hope we have some time today to talk about it, to criticize it, to look at it positively and bravely, which is the spirit of the report. So that's the most important message, I think, to begin with. Certainly from that's my view on this. There are a few things that I wanted to mention just at the outset anyway, and they seem even more important today. The first one is we use the word solidarity. We're all using it today. We're, you know, on text messages to each other and on when we're talking to each other. But I wanted to talk about in this talk today, what does solidarity actually mean? You know, how do we form solidarity? You know, I've only worked for Oxfam for the past 2 years, but all my life I've kind of worked on this subject. When we talk about combating poverty, how do we do that? Like, how are the bonds formed between us at all stages, like in over the years that I've worked on it in my life, but also going back through history. That's something that maybe we could have a conversation about. Like, when we talk about sticking together and organizing, being brave, how do we do that? Because I think that's the question that the report asks. It says that we have all these strengths and identities, but what I thought when I read the report is what do we do next? Now, how do we stick together and act on this? That's what I took from the report more than anything. And yeah, there are a few more kind of deeper points that I have written down here that I'd like to mention if we can. You know, we say structural. What does structural actually mean? When you think about poverty, and of course, like I'll talk about Oxfam and what I know about the poverty right throughout the world. But even all the time I spent in Africa, when I see people the same as anywhere else who you would say are living in poverty, it seems to me it's about freedom. You know, freedom and independence, that you want to escape poverty and live your life. And that's when I think about poverty, that's that sense of escaping and gaining your freedom. That's what really strikes me. And then, but then that contradicts what I've been saying, because it's not all about us acting on our own. I'd like to get back to that. How do we form bonds? How do we stand and act together? You know, now more than ever. So that's all I want to say at the outset. That's probably too much. I want to hear from you, because today is about your voices and how you're going to react to this, and that's what I want to take from this talk, and add anything else that I can.
Thank you so much, Simon, and for sharing all of your thoughts. One thing that also came up when we were creating our resource is the fact that poverty is a complex issue, but also multifaceted challenge that kind of requires a lot of comprehensive understanding. So now Niamh is just going to share an Oxfam poster and some reflections from participants about their perspective and thoughts about poverty.
Yeah, I know that it might be a bit difficult to read that, but even just from the imagery there, just give people a minute if they didn't get a chance to see this before. And then I'll share some of what participants responded to in the pre-email for this event.
One of the answers that really stood out to me was just the one in the middle where it's talking about in the main that poverty is intersectional, and I think that's a part that we really focused on our resource, that gender and location in the world playing a huge factor in someone's likelihood of experiencing poverty. Then some of the other answers that came up was that there is a serious imbalance between who holds the money and the wealth world-wise. Another one is that wealth favors men. Capitalization has completely imbalanced the world. Has come up a few times as well that we have capitalism is no good for society, and that capitalism and generational wealth has ruined the world. So those are just some of the responses that people have shared. Thank you for sharing that, Niamh. So now I would just like to introduce you to some of the members that are here with us today from the Young People's Committee. So we have Shabelle and Shauna here with us, and I would just like to invite Shabelle to speak with you first about some of the sections of the resource.
Yes, thank you so much. This resource is a case study of what young people could do when they critically think about an issue. It's a group of young people that come together to think about and challenge their own ideas. The final resource came with an awful lot of support from the NYCI, and it's about 40 pages long, filled with interactive activities, exercises that you can do with your young people or to reflect yourself. As we'll see here, you can see some lovely quotes, and it's really thinking about how we came to the conclusion, what definitions we came to of poverty. So as you'll see here, there's two particular quotes from our Young People's Committee, and a definition that we felt incorporated all the parts. And as Fatima mentioned there, we focused an awful lot on identity and intersectionality, and how all those parts come into this issue as a systemic issue. It's split up into 4 parts. I can go into detail about the first 2, and then Shauna will lead you into the next 2. The first part is about identity and intersectionality. So as I mentioned, we can't come to talk about poverty without identifying what is left behind us. Just as we said in the Braveheart, where it's not a safe space, it's a brave space. It's where we all come with all of our scars and wounds, and how do we create something beautiful out of that? So identity and intersectionality is more defining the different things that can define our lens on life as we come into talking about issues like this, and how we come to experience poverty as well. The second part then is more about poverty intersecting with identity, and that defines maybe those lenses that I was discussing there, and how poverty can affect different people in different ways. Shauna, if you'd like to go ahead about part 3 and 4, particularly about how we can act on those things.
So part 3 and 4 are mainly about the sort of activities that you can do with young people in order to empower them. So part 3 is based around spoken word and poetry, which is a great way to help young people to understand their own emotions and thoughts around an issue, and to help them to verbalize their ideas. It can be really empowering for young people. And then in this section, we also talk about global inequality, because poverty isn't something that's just personal or local or even national. And the poetry can really help young people to understand this global element to poverty. Then part 4, there's some more activities around poverty, the main one being a walking debate. Some of the statements that we've brought to this walking debate include living in poverty dictates your choices, holidays are a luxury, and all young people get the same education. And this activity can help you to challenge your own ideas and the ideas of others. Obviously in this the statements that you choose to work with are directly impacted by the group of young people that you're working with, and their experiences and what has impacted them most. So obviously always be informed about that before you choose your statements. Yeah, so I think we're going to move on to a group poem that we wrote.
Maybe before that, actually, though, we could invite any reflections on that from Sarah and Simon, or from anybody else in the meeting.
I don't have reflections, but I have a long lecture all about care work and everything, that why it's so important, why it could change everything, why our attitude to women's work, which it usually is, needs to be paid, and we need to stop unpaid work, and how it could completely change the world. But I'm not going to make that lecture now. I'll just that's enough for me. But thanks for bringing that up, because that's truly, I think, in the area between gender and class, or gender and poverty, one of the ways in which we could change everything.
One thing I'd say is that it's before you would embark on a teaching, that's the right word, or facilitating a workshop like with that workbook, is to be very clear of your own motivation, because it does matter, actually. And that's my own experience of having different people facilitate this type of work. It is really important that the person facilitating understands their own motivation for doing it, where they lie themselves in all the issues, and that they understand, like, and almost would want to be a participant on the program before they would deliver the program, you know. So I think alongside with this would be maybe a session with youth workers on how to deliver the program, because it is so dependent on the person's viewpoint on all these different issues. It influences hugely how it's delivered.
That point is really taken, Sarah. Absolutely. And in the resource, there are sections that really recommend, for instance, Shauna just made reference there to the walking debate that's in there. And there's a real recommendation that people are very selective about the statements that they pick in that, so that they are resourced in themselves to facilitate a discussion on that, and don't just launch into a whole series of statements. But the wider point about needing time to be resourced to do this work is very well taken. Back to you, Fatima. Was it Gabriel?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And I think as well, as you say, sharing a resource and being equipped in the resource is something that we're going to have a chat about with Shauna later on, about how we can reflect on that. But I'm going to move on to another part of the resource outside of the book, which we have, which was a spoken word piece. I see Kelvin is in the room, who facilitated a workshop with the Young People's Committee about how we can reflect on poverty in a more creative way. And as part of that, we brought our poems together and created a collective poem, and a video was put together as part of that. So there's two parts to it. It's a poem that you can read. There's also individual poems from individual members of the YPC. And then there's also the video. And our perspective on the video was a way for us to further understand the systemic issues that are in the additional aspects of this, which are additional aspects like in our identity and our intersectionality, are issues such as housing and education and racism and other issues that come into it. I think we saw from yesterday the power of visuals and how it can really make us reflect on things that are happening. It makes things real. So without further ado, I think we're going to share the video along with our spoken word poem, and we're going to perhaps ask for your reflections and thoughts on it afterwards. And then Shauna may lead a piece on how we can facilitate this and do this for ourselves.
Dear poverty, you are not necessary, yet you cling onto humanity with such tenacity. Born from inequality and systemic oppression, your grasp on the vulnerable leaves them in a constant recession. Do you know who holds your chains? Those who profit from the pain, the ones who turn a blind eye and let your victims suffer and die. You prevent people's dreams and tear apart communities at the seams. But we won't let you win. We'll fight until your eradication within. Dear poverty, you are not necessary. And we wish more people took the time to understand your many root causes. But one day, we'll overcome you completely.
Thank you for sharing that, Niamh. It's a lot to take in, as I say, like visually, there's a lot to see, there's a lot to hear. What's nice about it is it's a group's work. There was a lot of support from Kelvin, and thank you to him for that. But that no one person wrote all of it, that it was individual lines that you can identify. Would anyone like to share, whether in the chat or by speaking? Maybe I'd go to the panelists. Have you any thoughts? I know you may have seen it before, if you have any ideas on it.
I guess I could share some of my thoughts when we were all like working on the video. We wanted the video to highlight systemic poverty and systemic inequalities, and it was a really nice activity, and we wanted like a resource to have different mediums to create a space for people to talk about poverty, and doing a spoken word poetry in a video but also having a text available was only one of the methods that we wanted to incorporate into a resource.
Sorry, I'm trying to speak a bit better. It's a great video, and it's so colourful and it's so poignant, I think. But I think it has to be seen in the context of poverty isn't a thing. Poverty is a way of living that's been caused by other people, namely governments, I suppose, or independent or capitalism, which is companies or independent individuals, but it is caused. It's not a weed that's growing in the garden. It's a flower that's thriving in the world, you know. So I think the essence of the whole workbook, I think, is to move a person from the point of thinking poverty will always be with us, and there isn't anything you can do to change that, to a point where they see it for what it is, that it's actually deliberately caused through unwittingly or wittingly, but it is deliberately caused, and that the only way to change it is more people speak out about it. So and that's a leap now. I'm not saying it's easy to do that. That's not a one session training program. That comes over a long period of time with people studying, going through the workbook and studying the whole, all the aspects of it, and more importantly is how people view it themselves individually. there's something about this for me in my own experience is that this work is an individual journey for people as opposed to a collective one in the room. Because even in, you know, creating a brave space, which I really like that term, everybody in the room will have their own individual thoughts, and those thoughts will depend on their own experience, personal, collective, and otherwise. So I think, like in some ways, before you'd start some of this training, you'd have to be clear as to where you think what your outcome is going to be, so that you can make sure that you work towards that outcome. Because if you're 10 people in the room, it really is 10 individual outcomes. It's not 10 people who are going to go to the same place, because they'll start from a different place. That's right. And that's the most exciting thing about it, I find, this kind of work. It's very important to evaluate it, not just because of some boring kind of reason we should evaluate it, but because it's to track, for individuals themselves, to track their own journey on this training, on this learning. Because some people will go from 1 to 10, and some people will go from 1 to 2, or some people might stay at 1. And then you have to revamp, edit your own training for the next session. So, but that's what makes it so exciting, actually, I find anyway, is you celebrate the difference, and you want to start from that point that everybody in the room is different. And what we're doing, even here today, is celebrating difference, that in this space, we will all shift our thinking, maybe 1 point by 12:30, or maybe no point, or maybe 10 points, you know. But it's the celebration of difference, or the lack of, which is caused last night, for instance, you know. Those people on the street feel different from people who are not on the street, but they don't feel anybody hears that. So people being heard is critical to all this work. And it's so, I can't tell you how exciting it is to watch people move on a journey, you know. And they bring with them, I suppose, be prepared when you're doing it as well, that the people in the room who've never done it before will add to the journey. You will learn something from them, in the same way as I will learn something here today, even though I've been doing this work for a long time. But I will certainly learn something here today from somebody, and it'll make me think, okay, the next time we do this, I must think of that, you know. So it's having an open mind all the time. It's feeling, you know, going to the space that everybody has something to offer. Everybody's opinion is valued. And by the end of the day, the only thing I would ask, Sally, maybe, is that we talk a little bit about last night and about the positivity, a positive way forward, because I just think we have to come up with some solutions for what happened last night. I think I said it earlier, the government don't know. They won't, they don't. And rather than hitting them over the head thinking they don't know what they're doing, I'm much more inclined to think that they actually don't know what they're doing, you know. And it's up to us in our own sectors to help them and tell them what needs to be done, and to shout at them, scream at them. But the ideas will have to come from us. They won't come from the government, because I don't believe they have the ideas. And I'm not being critical. I'm saying that in a more factual way. So I'll stop.
No, Sarah, thanks. Just making some good points there. Sean, I think you're doing the next part here.
When you're ready, Shauna.
Yep. Okay, so for the next part, I'm going to be leading a poetry exercise. So using the same techniques that we used to make the group poem that you just heard. So if you have a pen and paper, or a notebook, or your phone, or just a new tab on your device, get that ready. I will be giving you a series of prompts. In the beginning, we will be attempting to personify poverty, and then towards the end, we will be facing this character that we have created and having a conversation. This may cause a lot of different emotions for you, and that is okay. It is absolutely normal. Everyone is ready? I'm going to start reading out the prompts. Take your time, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me. Okay, so first, what does poverty look like? Is it tall, looming, thin, large? Next, what personality does it have? Is it loud, aggressive, or is it quiet? Now, what is our relationship with poverty? Is it a close friend, or someone we want to ignore, or a bully? How do we feel about it? Next, when do they arrive? Do they come every day, or only on certain occasions? Are they on the streets, in shops, in schools? Where do you see them? When you do meet them, what do they say to you? Now you've listened and it is your turn to speak. What do you say to poverty? How do you respond to this character? And finally, what is your final message to poverty? Now, take your time to finish your thoughts. And when you are finished, I think we're going to go into breakout rooms to discuss this experience and maybe share some poems if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back.
So if anyone wants to share either their poem with the whole group or any thoughts about the process of creating your poems, whether in the chat or if you want to turn on your mics, that would be great.
It might help people remember what breakout rooms they're in. If I can invite like a room at a time, so we can make sure people have an opportunity. So would anyone from room 1, that was Aaron and Debbie, would anyone from that group like to share how they got on?
I can, Niamh. So we kind of went into discussion of what poverty looks like to us, like when we give it that human face, and a lot kind of changed. So it was looking at it in different ways, and how we both, like, Ardlon couldn't join the conversation because they were having issues with their signal, but me and Debbie had a really nice conversation around that piece of what does it look like to us, and how do we sit with it in that like reality, and which can be uncomfortable at times. And we went from viewing them as individual figures of like poverty as this person or this thing, to like a family of figures, because there's so many different remits of poverty, and there's so many different types. So there's like from food poverty to economic poverty, like women's poverty can be really big in certain parts of the globe, and all of them have a different face, but they can attack, or not attack would be one word to use, but latch onto different people in different spaces in different ways. And then what is poverty? Like we all know poverty is an everyday thing, and like someone on the outside could look like it's not affecting them, but on the inside it really is. And then like the bottom end of poverty, you can have that flight or fight mode of I'm in it, I'm stuck here and I'm never getting out, or like, no, I need to just think about myself and not compare myself to anyone else now at this moment.
Thank you for sharing. I just call it the names for group 2. Aidan, Georgina, and Jessica. And I'd like to share from that group.
Yeah, we had a really interesting conversation, Niamh, about it. In a sense, overall, it was a really creative process, and we've been asked maybe to think about poverty in a way that we mightn't have thought about it before. But it was kind of like the personification of poverty is what we were speaking about, and that we were visualizing different entities. So, for example, I started doodling down like the scales of justice and seeing kind of the structural stuff in my head coming out, and then others kind of had this like faceless entity or someone who was, you know, a being that was just enticing people into poverty, and kind of like a big bully type entity. But it's a real personal journey. And we're encouraged to be brave, and it goes back to that poem at the start in terms of that brave space, but that it's ultimately a really creative and useful process that we will be encouraging our young people to do in a safe way. So really thankful that we had the opportunity to do it. I think I've got our points, but if anyone else from the group wants to jump in, please do. But I think that's in the main really, really worthwhile experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Aidan. The group 3 had Elaine, Roxana, and Chevelle. Is any you'd like to share?
Yeah, we had a very general and lovely conversation, but just overall, I think we were talking about how nice this is as a space to kind of debrief from yesterday and to kind of reflect on that space in a very, very positive way, because I feel this resource and this conversation and the people in this room are ready and open with solutions to take action on everything that came to light. I can share one line from when we did it initially, which I think was quite relevant from when we spoke, which was our kind of message to poverty in the end, which was, let us join hands with our hearts intertwined and embrace the struggle side by side. In the face of poverty's adversity, we prevail. So that was kind of a message of hope for how this room can move together.
I invite you, Chevelle, to type that into the chat so people can, really take it in. I appreciate that one. In the next room, that was room 4, Fatima, Kelvin, and Miriam were in there. Something you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think our group was very nice conversation. We all kind of like discuss about what we felt of poverty and also a bit about our poems. And then I think there was one line that also we all kind of like saw that poverty is like unexpected, like it happens unexpectedly. And you never know when it's going to come. But we also, like from my side, I kind of like added a bit of it that which brought me to Simon, your question that you raised in the beginning, like what is solidarity? It also came to it that like poverty in itself, sometimes even though it comes unexpected, we can predict it when it will come. And then we all plays a role, like in order to eradicate poverty, we all kind of like play a role in it when it comes into showing solidarity. So is solidarity just a bit about donation and then that's it? Is it like I just donated? So does solidarity comes into a play when you want to say that, you know what, because am I ready to give up my privileges in order to make sure that it helps eradicate poverty? That is another kind of like, is that also forms of where does solidarity actually stretches up to? And that is something kind of like question that also came up into it. So yeah, it was very, very nice conversation and then beautiful poems that we also heard. So thank you. Mm-hmm. If anyone wants to add something, please.
Thank you. I'm only sad that I wasn't in all these breakout rooms. So the next breakout room was breakout room 5. and in there was Alex, Sarah Gallagher, and Shauna. Anyone like to share from that space?
I'm afraid I kind of half hijacked the group and was talking to Alex and Shauna about how they got involved with the whole process here and how the process worked. So we spent our time talking about that because I'm always really interested in how like this Dear Poverty, how things are created, resources like that, and the process that goes on. So that's really what we were talking about. Unless Alex and Shauna might like to add anything else, but I'm guilty of that.
Well, I think Shauna, do you want to share a line or two on to summarize maybe like what you were sharing about that? Because I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, so we're just sort of talking about like the process of, first of all, like getting involved in this sort of initiative, and how having like the support of your own youth group can really help that. So I had the support of Nadia from Up Cork, and she helped me a lot in filling out my application, and just how like throughout the year that we were working on this, it was a really great experience to get to know people and to make those connections within this community, and how it's really helped me personally with my own confidence, and with my ability to speak on these issues, because I have all of these people who I've been able to listen to and to hear their experiences, and that's really informed a lot of my decisions when it comes to my own activism.
Thank you. Chevelle or Fatima, did you want to add anything to that before we move to room 6?
Yeah, I think briefly just for me, as Shauna mentioned there, everyone coming to the space with different backgrounds and experiences, and particularly, I mean, we came to the decision to choose poverty as an issue that we would tackle across all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think when we were coming to that conclusion, hearing everybody's passion for the issue, whether it was personal or whether it was their own activism, as Shauna mentioned, really brought a really powerful start, and made everyone very aware of everyone's different backgrounds. And that's all I'd add. It was a really powerful room to be in.
Fatima, did you want to share anything on your experience?
Yeah, no, like I think for the most part, I'd like to echo Chevelle's and Shauna's words. Like in the group, like everyone had different skills, different experiences, and the things that they worked with. But once we actually all agreed on a topic that we wanted to work on, we could see like how much passion people had for the topic in general and how much they wanted to achieve, like in the resource and all of their intentions. And it was a really, really empowering space to be in.
Maybe just to add one line to that, I joined the team in June, and it's been a really positive and empowering experience for me too to engage with the YPC, who picks this topic that I think people don't always engage in. And I think it's good that like young people bring these topics to the fore, because we need to engage in them, and it's challenged me as a facilitator and as a mentor and as a person to engage in this topic too. So I really appreciate the YPC bringing it in front of me so that I really can engage in this topic too. I'm gonna bring it back to, there's 2 rooms that didn't get a chance to speak yet. So that would be room 6. That was Alison, Emer, Ellen, and Simon. Anyone like to share from your room or any responses to what you just heard?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to take words out of Simon's mouth, because Simon actually had a very interesting experience with the activity. But Simon, if you want me to talk on your behalf, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know. But Alhassan and Ellen both had networking issues, so we broadened out the conversation more so to using art as an activity to engage in a difficult conversation. And Ellen said that they have a background in the arts, so they love anything that draws that link between really, really large topics and an easy way to connect young people to those topics. And then they said that they would love to see more of an action aspect after that. So like after the poem is created, they'd love to see the different ways in which kind of that empowerment and active participation can be taken after. So is it going to be something on social media? Is there a way for the young people to present those poems? So there's lots of opportunities there. And then we spoke with Al Hassan as well about his experience working with young people on the topic of poverty in Sierra Leone. For those who don't know, Al Hassan is based in Sierra Leone. And Al Hassan said some really, really poignant things, said that corruption in Sierra Leone there that supersedes justice is what creates abject poverty in Sierra Leone. So Al Hassan liked the activity because he uses many different forms of activism and actions to appeal to the different interests of young people in Sierra Leone. So liked the idea of bringing in poetry as an art form for that. And then Simon, do you want me to speak on your behalf about your experience, or do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, sure. You can speak on my behalf.
Okay, so I'm going to be as honest as Simon was at the start, but he said, I hated the activity at the beginning. So Simon mentioned that like he works with poverty as a real systemic system of an issue, and that the idea of personifying poverty at the start, he was going, why am I doing this? This is not going to have the same impact as we would like to have around the issue of poverty. But then he said, by around question 6 or 7 onwards, the emotion side started coming into play, and he was able to really get closer to the feelings of it all and be able to kind of help to process those emotions through an abstract art form. And I thought Simon's creation was really cool. Simon created a multi-headed hydra, and it's like there are so many different heads to poverty and you don't know which one to fight first because all are attacking at the same time, which I thought was really interesting. So that was our group. But Simon or Ellen or Al Hassan, if any of you want to add anything, please do.
Thank you very much. So the next group there is our final group, which is Diandra, Grace, and Jen. Grace, would you like to share?
Nipmo.
Oh, sorry, Nipmo. Sorry. How would you like to share about your in your group, Nipmo? Would you like to share about your group experience?
Okay, I was just we're just discussing about we had different ideas about poverty, but they were not different from each other, you know. And I personally talk about poverty is linked with everything, both in a positive way and in a negative way. And more or less like is everywhere. Poverty is everywhere. There is poverty. The lifestyle of a person cannot be balanced in terms of nutrition. And you see someone developing obese and those kind of unhealthy living. So poverty is also fat. And then we talk about thin as well. And then poverty is thin because you know, the person might be depreciating, and that is physical aspect of it. And then we come to the other aspects, like I compared to what happened yesterday, because I was outside as well, and my family has missed me. I couldn't make my way home. That's why I was, even up till now, I couldn't speak anything because I'm still wondering what really happened yesterday in town. And I'm just imagining what really happened to that individual, decided to stab people and all that. It could be as a result of poverty that now brought aggressiveness, which makes poverty become aggressive. And that's now linked to affecting the public, which is becoming public problems. You know, so the social problems now that kicks in might be as a result, because we wouldn't know what really happened to the life, the inside life of that young man that now instigated him to start thinking of causing that kind of issues that brought out fire here and different kinds of things. So So poverty is actually linked to many things, many things. It's not just in one place, it's everywhere. It's not different from any other place. But when an incident happened like this, referring to poverty, mental issues arises here and there and different problems, that is why I even really like the way we are talking about the youth, because the other day I wrote something in my page, Facebook page, and I said, youth is also somebody's child. I know why I put that. And what I meant by that was that, we kept talking about children. It's just like when we talk about gender issue. In the past, we always focus on training the women. If you refer to African countries, they were only referring to train women or look after women, and they ignore the men. But later on, the men are coming to marry the women, and then there's violence in the future.
Ndipmong, I'm sorry to cut across you. Ndipmong, I'm sorry. I apologize for cutting across you. I'm just conscious of the time. You're raising some really important issues, and we welcome them in the space. And I think that the poetry device has been really effective in allowing the processing of some ideas. And so it shows actually how, and that's, I think, come across through all the groups, how effective it is for surfacing things and maybe for helping to make the link between the personal and systemic relationship with poverty. So thank you, Ndipmong, for your points there. Unfortunately, because we are scheduled to 12:30, we don't have a chance to explore those fully right now. But maybe we might ask Simon, actually, just on the local and global connections with poverty, if you would be open to saying something else. Then Siobhan has a lovely closing exercise for us. And we'll stick up a Menti as well. We'd love to get some of your feedback and what Sarah said earlier about the kind of collective action that we take in response to not just last night's event, but to the systemic issue of poverty. So Simon, if you could give us a brief maybe link up there, then we might go to the Menti, and then we'll have a lovely closing exercise. And we really invite you to stay for that Siobhan is going to facilitate for us.
I don't know if I can link global and the local very easily, but I think the best thing I can do is respond to Kelvin, who asked about my view on my questions about solidarity and how you make solidarity or how it's brought about. If I what I understood in a way, or what I took from what you said, Kelvin, is that is solidarity about planning? Is it about careful, steady planning to make the world a better place? A lot of boring work, a lot of sacrifice, putting others before yourself, meetings. I don't care if they're online or in person. I'm only asking what is the best way to do this. And I think that's right. I think that's the history of people that inspire us and have done things to combat injustice and poverty. That's the history that inspires me and people I've worked with all over the world. But out of that kind of work comes incredible ideas, sometimes really, really beautiful ideas that come as a result of that just sheer effort and hard work. So that's the great reward. They're the great rewards that we know and how we make progress on poverty, in this part of the world and every part of the world. We talked about care worker early on, it came up. I'm delighted that was the example that you used from Oxfam. That where we are with care work is that we now can say in policy terms, and the ILO, the International Labour Organization, has used this definition, that anyone who provides something for someone else, makes a meal for one other person, helps or cares for one other person, they should be paid for that work. That's no longer the case that you just work in a house and not be rewarded. The same way as you did work somewhere else, that work should be paid for, recognized, valued. That's what I meant when I said that could change everything for women and girls and for anyone who provides care work, sometimes not exploited, not properly paid, abused. Now that idea came about through hundreds of years of work. I was pushing on this idea of the women's movement, pushing on this idea of like no more unpaid work, no more unpaid labor. So that idea, which is in my view a magnificent idea, brilliant idea, but it comes from all that boring planning work, which I call solidarity. And sorry if that's a long description of it, but that's what I took from your question. That's in a way what we all have to do. So that's my take on global, local, what we all have to do together.
Yeah. Sorry, that's really
sorry, can I just make one last point, one very last point, if I may? You know, the other thing about global and local, like the far right, we're all thinking of this threat of the far right, or people who appear to be influenced now by the far right in this city or in this country. They don't want to talk about inequality. Like, that's the thing that stands out. People saying, oh, blaming the other people. Say to them, ask them, what I mean, I know you're probably doing this already, but they don't want to talk about the fact that 1% of people owns a quarter of all the wealth. 10% of people owns half the wealth all around the world. Now they'll be abusive and say, oh, you're a communist or whatever. That doesn't matter. That's the real cause of injustice. And yeah, I'm just conscious of that when we have to take on the far right. That's what I would be saying. And that exists in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, and in Ireland, and everywhere. It's the same thing. So that's my closing message on that.
No, really welcome points, Simon. And I think as we have a similar strategy when we talk about issues of inequality, we talk about actually things like care. We talk about things like food. We talk about water. We talk about things that people can relate to immediately as a way to open these conversations. So we really appreciate actually what you did there. Just, excuse me, we think maybe just in terms of honouring this is also partly a healing space this morning. Siobhán has an exercise for us. I'm just reading there, Aidan is saying, completely agree, Simon, poverty is systemic. I think it would be helpful to open conversations with young people with this focus. Youth work plays a pivotal role, and like Sarah said earlier, it requires significant investment. Yeah, well, we all agree with that. Thanks, Aidan. We might invite Siobhán to do a closing exercise now, which is about solidarity, being together. And we will post the Menti link into the chat, and we'd really appreciate it in your own time. If you could, we'll close out with the Menti actually. We really appreciate that. We're funded by Irish Aid in our work, and we obviously couldn't do the work we do without that. So part of that is to evaluate the work. So Siobhán, are you ready with your closing exercise?
Sure, of course. Just I suppose as a transitional space as we go into the rest of our work days, our school days, whatever that may be, that we can reflect on how this has made us feel emotionally, but also maybe in our bodies. So it's a little bit of kind of a physical exercise to kind of transition us as we finish up with the Menti and finish up with the Zoom. So it also will help us when we're moving forward that we can acknowledge and identify these tensions when we are facilitating it in the future. And yeah, so we're just going to start with it. So if you have your two hands, keep one hand out and turn one hand into a fist. And what I want you to do is feel the power of your fist. Where do you feel it? In your hands? Are your nails digging into your hand like mine are right now? Do you feel it in your arm? Is it in your shoulder? And then I want you to place your fist into your hand and put your hand over your fist and really tighten it. And wherever you feel that tension, whether it's in your arms, your upper arms, and your shoulder, where do you feel the pressure? And then try to unfurl your fist. Try to release it. Okay, and you can't because there's a hand over it. And where do you feel that? Do you feel it in your fingers? Okay. And then remove your hand from your fist. And then place your hand into your fist. So have your hand below your fist as kind of a support under your fist. And now unfurl your fist, release. Slowly. And feel the support of the hand below. Where do you feel it now? And to connect this, I suppose, to where we are and what we're doing is the role of the youth worker, the facilitator in this person. Sorry, I think I a second, but I suppose the to reflect on the role of that is the role of person is to reflect and to be that support for a young person that's going through this process, whether it's going through the resource, the exercises, or the spoken word activity. So that comes from Stacey Haynes, and she has a recent book out on the politics of trauma. So that's where that exercise comes from.
Super, Siobhán. We'd like to thank the Young People's Committee really for hosting today's session and for all of the intention that went into creating the resource and to hosting the space today. And we are going to share the Menti screen in a sec, but maybe just again to honour this as much a space of inquiry and exploration, that also that it's the intention this morning was that it was a healing space. We'd be delighted as you close out just to give a word that you're taking away as you leave the space this morning. I'm going to start with you, Ellen Corby. Because you're with NYCS as well, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Sorry, would you just repeat that question? Just I'm having a little bit of connection issues.
Oh, sorry. Just a word.
No, it's totally me.
Okay. A word as you close out of the space this morning. What you're feeling?
Togetherness.
Good. Great. Lovely. Maybe, Ellen, you can invite somebody else.
Yeah, Emer Manning, if there's another Emer on the call, I'm not sure.
Sure. I feel like I'm going to steal a lot of people's words here, so I apologize in advance, but hope. And I'll pass on to, forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Ugna?
Sorry guys, I was on the Menti thing. My word would be peace. And the next person that I will pick is, there's so many. Kelvin, if I'm saying your name right.
Yeah. My word for this workshop, I would say I'm grateful.
You're going to invite someone, Kelvin?
I will invite Fatima.
I would say I feel whole. And I'm going to invite Simon.
I would say action. And I'm going to go to Alex.
I would say positivity. I would go to Debbie.
I would say connection. And I'm going to go to Roxana.
I'm going to say support. Sorry. Elaine?
Thanks, Roxana. I'm going to say strength. I'll pass it to Aaron.
I'm going to say caring, and I'll pass it to Sarah.
I'm going to say beginning. It's a new beginning, and I've lost track of who's talked at this point. Shauna, have you said anything yet?
I'll say empowerment, and I'll pass on to Chevelle.
Thanks, Shauna. I know Kelvin said it before, but I do feel very grateful today. And I'm going to pass to Aidan.
Thank you. I feel energized after this morning. I really feel energized. So thanks to everyone who organised it. I will pass to Niamh.
I'm going to take the word power. So I've seen a lot of powerful people in this space, and that gives me hope. So I will invite sorry, everybody moved around on my screen. Nitmo.
Well, I
Thank you.
would say confidence in holding our hands.
Who would you like to?
You want to recommend somebody?
No, I said I will say confidence in holding our hands.
Nice. Appreciate that. As we've only got a few names left, I'm gonna say I feel solidarity and connection, and that's a powerful feeling to feel this morning, and something that we generate ourselves collectively. We come together like this, so it was interesting timing that we had this morning. I just really appreciate that we did. Who hasn't gone yet? Actually, is anyone here who hasn't spoken? I think not. Okay. So thanks everybody. Thanks for the YPC. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to us for being together in solidarity, and we appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
Thanks so
all.
much.
Thank you, everybody. It's a great
Thanks,
morning.
everyone.
Thank you.